Yeah, hi. Thank you very much for a great show.
Oh, we've got a microphone there. Great, okay.
I've got a question. In my professional experience, what I see from Trump is not so much policy statements as a really, really successful psychopath knowing how to actually, no, truly, I'm not exaggerating, know how to pick the weaknesses of any opponent and target them and win that way, in a way that other people end up thinking, oh, gee, yeah, they have got that weakness. Why is this not part of the media coverage of Trump's candidacy? Because it's pretty obvious to the medical professional on the street.
Because he was standing next to Ted Cruz.
The mic's up. Can we hear that? Yeah. I think it's fair to say that you could call a lot of people psychopaths in American politics, and Ted Cruz, yeah, it certainly is up there. Although I think the point that the lady, I think your name was, Virginia was making, I think is a valid one. That Trump is very good at identifying weaknesses in his competitors. Like, I mean, when he first started with the Lying Ted, everyone's laughing at him, going, "Oh God, what are you, like 5 years old?" But 3 weeks later, evangelicals don't trust Ted Cruz, and you go, "Well, how did that happen?" Lying Ted, yeah, and he's trying again with Crooked Hillary. Does anyone? What do people think of the Crooked Hillary strategy? Do we think that's going to work?
Well, with the greatest respect, I think it is working. I mean, you know, the amount of coverage. All you need to do is if you go Google Crooked Hillary, you know, and have a look at the number of articles and like, there's so much coverage about all the things that Hillary has supposedly done, which were, you know, she and Bill did together. I mean, one of the, you know, like, I just pick up the paper, and I'm a bit like you, I'm addicted to Google and reading American politics, but the number of times I've seen the references to the fact that Hillary and Bill stole stuff from the White House, and, you know, everything that she and Bill did, I mean, it's all there, and people are reading that stuff, and they're talking about that stuff all the time. Now, the problem is, that's appealing, not for Trump, that's great, because that's appealing to all his people.
Base, yeah.
But is it going to be enough to change the views of enough Democrats? I mean, the groups that we spoke about before, I don't think so. I actually think Hillary will win, but I actually don't think it's going to be overwhelmingly endorsed. I think it's going to be a pretty tight race. Now, I'm actually the only person who predicted that the last federal election would be tight. 2 weeks beforehand, I said everyone's kidding themselves if they think Malcolm Turnbull's going to walk this in. It's going to be really tight. I'm the only person who said it publicly, and I'm saying this one is going to be really tight as well.
You and Kirsten Drysdale. I say that because she's in the audience. Next question. We got a microphone. Yep.
Hi, how are you?
Yep.
So Gary Johnson is currently 2 points away from 15%. You need 15% to get into the debates. What do you think is his chance of becoming this generation's Ross Perot?
Interesting.
Does anyone want to take this? Gary Johnson?
Trump's?
No, Gary Johnson.
Johnson.
Gary Johnson's 13%.
I've been waiting for this.
15% he gets into the
15% gets into debates.
Well, I don't think he's going to be this generation's Ross Perot. He could be this generation's Ralph Nader. So, you know, in 2000, Ralph Nader was a spoiler. He got 1% of the vote, but the vote between Bush and Gore was so close that Gore won the popular vote, but Bush won the electoral vote. And had Nader not run and all those votes went to Gore, Gore would have been the president of the United States. So he could be a spoiler if it is a really tight race.
Nader, who is he spoiling? Because he takes a lot of votes off Clinton as well.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know who he spoils. I would guess he spoils Trump disproportionately, but I don't know. I don't know what the polling looks like.
He's got some weird cross-demographic, cross-party appeal that will appeal to libertarians on the right, but pot smokers on the left, and so it's kind of and kids, right, for that reason, right, because no one smokes pot over the age of 40. So he will. I think you know, that's a real interesting question, and you know, the thing you got to remember, it's grafted onto the Electoral College as well. In which states is he strong enough to pull enough and change the rank ordering, right? They don't have preferential voting either in the states, right? It's first past the post, as we say. And so it's really a state-by-state proposition as to really thinking through the electoral consequences of his candidacy. Perot got 19% of the vote nationwide in 92. and won no electoral college votes, right? Carried a couple of counties in Maine, right? Only carried a couple of counties, even though you can be at 19% nationwide, but all it does is effectively spoil. And in that case, it was a spoiler against, what typically thought to be a spoiler against the Republican Party. The thing that Trump reminds me about Perot, just to finish this off, is could have Perot done it? Could have Perot, like there's a lot of, if he'd gone in harder, could he have gone in and hijacked the Republican Party in '92, right? And that what Trump showed, it was, you know, and we'd be happy, you know, all of this could have been happening, what is that now? You know, oh my goodness, is it that longer? 16, 24 years earlier than
That's exactly why you're not going to see a Perot effect this time around, because we've essentially got a third-party candidate as the Republican. So all that appetite's already been satisfied.
I was going to say, I think we should point out the reason why this fellow was talking about 13%, 15% tipping points, because 15% is when they get in the debate. And so if they get to 15%, then all of a sudden there's 3 candidates rather than 2 and some dude who no one's heard of. So, but I was just going to say, one thing I'd add is every time John brings up polls on the show, I always go, get rid of your polls, stuff them, because they don't mean anything until after the conventions, right? We've just had, I think Gary Johnson's at his high watermark at the moment because neither Republicans nor the Democrats until quite recently were unified. Some would say they're not unified now, and he's obviously getting the remnants of them. And as soon as they unify, and they will unify, he's going to lose some support. So I would wait 3 weeks. If he's still 13% in 3 weeks, then we've got a third-party candidacy. But I would say in 3 weeks, it might be a bit different. So I wouldn't look at any polls until then, I'd say. I'm going to tell John that every week for the next 3 weeks.
Yeah, sure. We've got a question on Twitter using the Planet America hashtag, and it comes from Phil22, who says, what happens if neither Trump or Clinton win in the Electoral College? So you need 270 Electoral College votes to win, Simon. If there is a Gary Johnson picks up he wins his home state, a few others, what happens?
it's thrown into the House of Representatives.
Which is dominated by...
Which is very interesting, right? That's where all the, but not just is it thrown into the House of Representatives, but the states vote state by state, right? And so then you get into the question of to what extent does gerrymandering help Republicans have more House seats and control more state delegations to the House.
And it's this year's House, not next year's House. So it's not the House after a Trump
right.
election. So they'll be voting in December, potentially for the presidency, with a huge Republican majority in the House.
Right, so here's the scenario. So Gary Johnson gets a few electoral votes. Neither Trump nor Clinton get a majority. He gets thrown to the House of Representatives, who elect Paul Ryan, the Speaker of the House, as the next President of the United States. And then you talk about people who don't know what they're talking about. This whole year of commentary will have just gone away.
Wow. Maybe that's what Ted Cruz was pitching for.
0. But my predictor's broken. I don't know what's going to
Go to say on a slightly different note, someone was talking about the gerrymandering effect. I saw, you'd be surprised to hear, a stat from 2012, where the Democrats would have needed to win the 2012 election by 7.5% to take the House. That's how badly the House is gerrymandered. So it's actually not just gerrymandering, actually. It's about just the natural lie of electorates, because the Republicans dominate rural areas, etc. There's
a debate about that. Let's just say.
Sure. Anyway, 7.5%, there's no debate.
That's right. That's right.
That's how much you need to win.
We've got another question?
Yep.
As of this week, there's a very big ailing elephant in the American room. That's Roger Ailes, having stepped down from Fox News this week, and under allegations of sexual harassment from people at Fox News. He has reportedly offered himself with two phone calls to Trump's people or Trump himself about joining the campaign. Now, I'd like to ask you, because you know Senator McCain, and in 2008, when he was behind from against Obama, he wanted to shake things up, so he chose Sarah Palin. What do you think the chances are now of Trump actually doing something like that to throw off the campaign? And what would be the repercussions for him?
Something like that being choosing a different vice presidential candidate?
No, having him come on as the as campaign manager.
Campaign manager.
Oh.
Roger Ailes working for Trump.
I mean, I don't know, but even if he did, that's not going to get him any votes. I mean, who would say, I'm not going to vote for Trump, but now I will because Roger Ailes is his campaign manager?
And to be honest, I mean, this is a man who's had to leave because he's having a sexual harassment charge. I don't think Donald Trump needs to associate with someone who's got more problems with women than he does.
But I'm just saying, because you can go back to fear, and I think that's why Sen McCain lost in 2000, to the fear campaign that was brewing from Fox News itself in 2000, and they were able to get McCain out because they showed that to South Carolina voters that he had children that were adopted from other races in other countries, and that really appealed to the white vote in South Carolina. So I'm wondering how far this might go in this 16-year period now of kind of a real correction for the Republican Party, and they actually jump onto this guy one more time and bring him in, or does it just end and this is how it fizzles out?
You know, Simon, if this is 1968 all over again, Roger Ailes was working for Richard Nixon. He was his ad man. So maybe it's not such a crazy idea.
Yeah. No, look, I think the whole Ailes story is very inside baseball. I just don't see it having big implications out in the mass electorate. But inside baseball, look, he's been a towering figure, and the Fox story is so important to the consolidation of the Republican Party as a political force in the United States. And Ailes was part of his vision, and moreover, he will be, he and Rupert Murdoch and that Fox executive group will get credit for establishing the proposition that there is money in partisan media, and the Tom Wolfe, the great mid-century moment of the new journalism, the curtain has come down on that, and he, his legacy and the legacy of that group at Fox there. I think that's their real contribution to American politics, and I think global media more generally, you're seeing that shakeout in media being played out here in Australia with the emergence of The Guardian, nibbling at Fairfax's audience, with the News Limited press in Australia sort of making their position kind of clearer over time as well. All of that, I think you can trace back to the germ of an idea that group in News Corp in the United States had. And I think we underestimate the power of that at our peril, and focusing on the departure of Ailes and the implications of that for this particular campaign, I think distracts us, I think, from the bigger influence, and I think a huge influence that Ailes and people around him had, and will continue to have for decades to come.
Questions?
My question is this: who is more likely between Trump and Hillary Clinton to be assassinated before the election, and under what circumstances?
I have no stats on that.
No. but I think you should go have a look, Chaz, because I'm told there's actually a book on how long it'll take someone to assassinate Trump. I've just been told that. I'm sure you'll find that.
And of course, this week, Trump's Veterans Affairs advisor this week did say Hillary Clinton should be shot. And there is a serious question here around the kind of the heat and the rhetoric around this, Helen. Is there the potential? I mean, we've talked about, again, the parallels with the 68, when a presidential candidate was shot, Martin Luther King was shot. Are we getting to that boiling point? We're seeing, riots on the streets of America's big cities in the middle of summertime. There's some similarities.
My own greatest worry about this convention was that it was going to be 68 all over again, and there would be riots in the streets. And I think the biggest logistical triumph is that we didn't see that. There were enough cops there. The protests were kept nice and peaceful. So I think that is definitely a checkmark in the Trump success column as far as this particular convention. In terms of more generally, if Trump becomes president, I don't think you'll see more unrest. I think you'll see less of it. Because the reason that you're seeing people rioting and blocking freeways now is because that behavior gets rewarded. They get, the president going on TV and acknowledging that, you have very real grievances, and I understand why you might be angry, and we're going to send, Eric Holder out to Ferguson, Missouri. Trump, by saying that he stands with cops and policemen, is saying that this kind of acting out will not be rewarded. And so I think by adjusting the incentives in that way, you're going to get less misbehavior, as anyone who has raised a teenager will be able to tell you.
I suggested the reward when people act out at the moment is not Obama paying them on the head if he does, but media coverage. And that's not going to stop. Like, when there's violence, there's media coverage, because it's flies to shit. But I was just going to say one thing, that with the...
I guess we're not filming this.
With the electoral value of violence and riots and assassinations, whatever, when there's violence, there's another psychological theory called the reactive liberals thesis, which is that whenever there is, and this happened in England after London bombings in 2005, whenever there's a period where people are scared, conservatives stay pretty much the same, but liberals become more conservative. And why that is, I don't know, but it's demonstrable. So if we do have riots, if we do have violence, if anything, if people become scared, that's going to help Trump, because he's the Conservative candidate and liberals will become more conservative.
We've got another question from Gregor on Twitter, and this is an interesting one, I think, for you to start with, Richard. There's a lot of talk about Trump outsourcing the presidency, giving Mike Pence, as he's apparently pitched to him, carriage of both foreign and domestic policy. Is there any credence to that? A bit like the Cheney-Bush scenario at certain times of the Bush presidency, where Dick Cheney seemed to be a very, very influential vice president.
Well, certainly you can have influence. You can't outsource the duties. You can't statutorily outsource the duties of the presidency. I mean, he has the commander-in-chief authority. He has the authority to sign legislation. I mean, all of the things, that's the president. And so even in the early years when Dick Cheney was influential on foreign policy, it was by persuading the president to take a particular course of action. It wasn't Cheney deciding on his own that the United States should do this or invade Iraq or do any of these other things. And so I don't know whether Donald Trump knows that, but you have formal responsibilities as president that cannot be delegated or outsourced. You can do some of that, and you can be influenced by the folks around you, but it's a real job.
Can I just say, I think, and I think the thing that we should actually keep in mind, should Donald Trump be elected, one would hope that he would do, to a certain extent, what Ronald Reagan did, and that is get the best and the brightest people around him. And if he does that, because that's one of the advantages of the American system. You can choose your cabinet. You don't have to have political hacks thrust upon you like you do here.
You say this from bitter experience.
I know a little bit about this.
That's the quote. That's the quote.
Keep rolling.
But that's,
we can edit that in, can't we?
Thank you very much, don't you, Dick? But I mean, that's the advantage that he would have. And one would hope, and I don't know, because you haven't seen it in anything because his ego is so big, but one would hope that he would have enough sense to say, okay, I don't know enough about foreign policy. I don't know enough about domestic policy. In fact, I don't know enough about anything, really. But I'm in a position now to choose the best and the brightest in this country to sit down with me and help formulate those policies. And I mean, I think anybody who looks at and Reagan, the administration was so successful because, one, he did that, and then he was a pretty good negotiator and got stuff through the Congress. So I'm not so sure about the negotiating through the Congress stuff, but I am hopeful that should he get elected, he'll have an outstanding cabinet.
Look, I don't know much about Reagan because I don't know much about history, but somebody else on the panel who does could enlighten me. Reagan's campaign, was it well run? Because Donald Trump's campaign is not well run.
No, it's not.
And I would say that who he chooses during his campaign is a sign of who he chooses as an administration. In fact, I saw a stat: 4 out of 10 Republicans think his campaign is poorly run. So, it's not a well-run campaign. So, is that a bad sign for who he chooses as administration?
Actually, yeah, I would. I would draw a bow between the campaign and how he'll put a governing team around him. A lot of those people come rolling right over, as Richard can attest, right? That's kind of the point. You road test that crew, that set of ideas generators on the one hand, and then people are going to get stuff done for you. And though he's got experience with getting stuff done in the world of business, government, and perhaps especially the government of the United States, is a very different beast. And the other thing it speaks to is it's just how complicated a US presidential campaign is. You have to be up and running, particularly in the battleground states, but not just there. You've got to be everywhere at once with coordinated media buys, with where the candidate is going, feeding the research in, but also keeping an eye on the big picture with respect to policy and well, at least that's the conventional playbook of presidential campaigns. Trump's inability to, at this stage at least, and it's getting late for crying out loud, that he hasn't got that infrastructure to me, I think it opens a legitimate question, an open question about what sort of a governing structure he's going to be able to build around him should he go on and win this thing.
Particularly with Attorney General Chris Christie and Defence Secretary Newt Gingrich.
Oh, that would be mad.
Okay.
Oh, just there's a limit to how much we can bash the Trump campaign, seeing as how they won.
That's true.
So I think a lot of the people who are saying, oh well, the convention has been slipshod and the campaign's been run in a bad way, are people who are upset that their own jobs as campaign consultants and number crunchers have been shown to be irrelevant. People flailing at their own irrelevance. So I think Trump needs to find a middle ground between I don't need anybody and I need this huge apparatus of 800 people that Hillary Clinton's got. Maybe right now he's a little bit too far over here, but I think he's going to find the sweet spot.
It is true that if Trump wins the election, that will prove that polling, data analysis, field work, everything that we've relied on from elections for years may not matter as much as we think.
Nate Silver's going to have to go back to baseball.
Okay, we've got time for one last question, I think. Who have we got the mic?
Hi. I'm American. I grew up in Texas, and my family is all there. And throughout the campaign, I've heard everything from the Republicans need to sit down and think hard about what they've done to Trump is the greatest thing ever. Do you think that no matter who wins, this will lead to a fracturing of the party, and in the next election cycle or two, there would be a Tea Party and old school small government Republicans and perhaps some other working class anti-trade group? And could this also happen on the Democratic side, where you have the old school Democrats and this very far left socialist progressive party?
What do you think, Helen?
I think if you watch just one speech from the Republican convention, make it Laura Ingram's, because she brought the house down. She was, I think, the best received speech of anyone there. And she demonstrated beyond a doubt that there is such a thing as Trumpism beyond Trump. So I think there will continue to be a Trumpism after Trump, and that may be what the party looks like from now on. That's my guess.
I can address the Republican side of this. After the 2008 and the 2012, and even after 96, when Bob Dole lost, there were really two arguments on the Republican side about why did we lose. One was you got to moderate and go to the middle and get voters who otherwise would vote Democratic. And that means, after 2012, immigration reform and all of these things that are designed to sort of attract more centrist voters. The counter argument is, no, there's not enough centrist voters, and even if there were, you're never going to get them. So what you have to do is drive turnout. And the way you drive turnout is actually not go to the center, you go to the right. By creating an emotional reason for people to be driven to the polls, then that you drive turnout and you win that way. And this has never been resolved. And so a lot of Republicans who tend toward the sort of centrist argument they figure we're going to lose this year, so they wanted to lose with Cruz, as they say, because Cruz is a favorite of the hard right and the talk radio guys and all this other stuff. What I think is going to happen in the Republican Party is the sort of most conservative wing of the Republican Party will say, see, once again, if Trump loses, once again we lost because we did not nominate a truly conservative candidate. Just like Mitt Romney, just like Bob Dole, just like John McCain, just like Donald Trump. These are not true conservatives. They're the most moderate or least Republican in the field. And so it puts off the day of reckoning for 2020 when you have to sort of run that experiment and see if that actually works. And I think Ted Cruz's speech at the convention was the opening speech of the 2020 campaign.
I think so. Can I just say that I think that the difficulty you're discussing is worldwide. I mean, we talked about during the program the rise of the far right in a lot of parts of the world, which is obviously a difficulty for the conservative parties. I mean, but we've got, the far left, if you like, also rising in certain parts of the world, which becomes a difficulty, for example, here with the Greens and the Labor Party. Here, the coalition has to look at and address, as I said during the program, issues raised by people like Pauline Hanson. I think that one of the biggest problems in all of this is that political parties need to work out truly what their base is and how they work with that base to grow that base. With a party like the Liberal Party, we've always, to use John Howard's words, described ourselves as a broad church, where we've had the Liberals and the Conservatives. The problem is that they have to actually come together. They do have to come together in a country like this, where they work cooperatively so that both their views can be acceptable to the community, but more importantly, acceptable to each other within party rooms, to be perfectly blunt. So it's a challenge, and the problem, again, is that, and I love you guys to death, but the problem is it's much more exciting for the media for them to be, talking about the discord and dissent and how they're at each other's throats than about how they work cooperatively together to get to a common good. So I think it's something that the Republicans, I think the Democrats, I think every political party in the world at the moment will be trying to work through that disconnect with their own views and the disconnect with their base.
Can I just add one thing, which is demographically, if you split America, the voting public, into, projecting forward to 2020, into minorities plus the white collar, like the college educated, versus the white blue collar and a fair whack of seniors, you've got a 50-50 contest.
Yeah.
And so that may be where it ends up.
Interesting. We're out of time again. Thank you all very much. Please thank our panel. And thank you all very much as well. Thank you to the United States Studies Centre at the University of Sydney for hosting today's event, and to the Giant Dwarf Theatre as well. I hope you can all join us at the same time next week. We've got the Democrats Convention show, and of course at the special time of 8 o'clock tonight, 8 p.m. on ABC News 24.
You can watch it again.
Regular repeat time. We'll see you again soon.
Thanks,
Thank you.
guys.
Thank
Yeah.
you.